Good morning. I'm Jenny Giddy, and I'll be reading a few words from the UN Environmental Sabbath Program. We have forgotten who we are. We have alienated ourselves from the unfolding of the cosmos. We have become estranged from the movements of the earth. We have turned our backs on the cycles of life. We have forgotten who we are. We have sought only our own security. We have exploited simply for our own ends. We have distorted our knowledge. We have abused our power. We have forgotten who we are. Now the land is barren, and the waters are poisoned, and the air is polluted. We have forgotten who we are. Now the forests are dying, and the creatures are disappearing, and humans are despairing. We have forgotten who we are. We ask forgiveness. We ask for the gift of remembering. We ask for the strength to change. We have forgotten who we are.
Thank you. I almost feel like those words don't actually need a sermon. They are in and of itself. But here I am. I want to tell you a little more about the Peace Museum and stuff, but I'll do that at the end, maybe. So the reading we just shared, this We Have Forgotten Who We Are, has become one of my all-time favorites, and I find myself sharing it every chance I can get. That repeating, "We have forgotten who we are," just gets me every time. And Jenny, you just read it so beautifully. Thank you. It's such a strong statement, a reminder and a call. And yet I have moments when I really think about it and I wonder, have we forgotten who we are? Or did we ever really know who we are? So for those of you who don't know me or haven't heard one of my sermons on earth care, as our intro said, I live at the intersection of science, spirituality, and peace, with an almost laser-like focus on the horror humans inflict on the planet and what that means for every living thing. As a biologist, a person of faith, and an eternal questioner, I spend most of my time being incredulous about how humans treat one another and all forms of life on Earth, as well as the Earth herself. And then the rest of my time is spent finding ways to address my incredulity and working to change things. So back to that question, have we forgotten who we are? Have we forgotten what we are made of? What we need to survive and thrive? Has our time on this planet changed our very nature and made it seemingly impossible for us to see beyond ourselves? Have we evolved in such a way that we've lost all connection to our true nature? Or did we ever really know who we were to begin with? Did we maybe evolve in such a way that our very cells and DNA stopped passing down this information, and here we are in late-stage capitalism with no idea of who we really, really are? Which of these is the reason we live so selfishly and excessively and exploitatively to such a degree that we created this unstable and unhealthy world? Maybe it doesn't matter if we've forgotten or if we never knew. Maybe we just need to remember now. And we need to reintegrate and remember now with all of our might. I do, however, think we've forgotten. I think that thanks to years and years of inculcation into capitalism and me-firstism, we have forgotten the very ground of our being. Because before organized monotheistic religions, namely Judeo-Christianity and their I would say poorly, interpreted interpreted versions and adherence to stories and texts that convinced everyone to dominate and control nature and all living things, we knew who we were. We were part of Earth. We were part of each other. We were manifestations of the divine, living in accordance with all living things on Earth, following the seasons and the stars and the Earth cycles, and living simply. Scientists remind us that the difference between humans and early hominids and other animals is our ability to think analytically, to create, and to communicate in complexity. And we've used that to advance, to build structures and societies that perhaps were not even imaginable a few thousand years ago or even a few hundred years ago. When we gave up being hunter-gatherers and nomadic wanderers, following the stars, following the food, following the seasons, with a very simple mission, which was to survive in our community, we had to make adjustments. We had to work the land. We had to find ways to store food. We had to irrigate. And sadly, once that ball started rolling, our more sophisticated brains pushed for growth. And over time, as religion explained our existence in relation to an external, all-knowing, all-powerful God, we set up the duality that will almost certainly mean our demise. Dualism is what separates us from nature. And I'm putting nature in quotes because that's not even the best word. I can't find the best word for it. But it also separates us from our own divinity. It separates us from one another. It separates us from the divine and sacred in all things on earth. Since we learned dualism, though, we can unlearn it. Through dualism, which is the persistent belief that we are not interconnected, and the USA does a really great job of enforcing this via our core value of rugged individualism, right? We easily fall prey to these root causes of climate chaos and environmental injustice, namely fossil capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, racism, patriarchy. And whether we want to believe it or not, we've all internalized those ideals and actually support their proliferation. Now, I'm big on naming root causes because A, as a peace educator, that's how we start all our teachings. And B, I firmly believe that if we can name them and then connect the dots, take whatever image works for you. It's either peeling the onion, digging up the roots, but I like to connect the dots also because of our web idea earlier, right? We can actually create a roadmap to extricate ourselves from that system. Most of us here know that there are things that can be done now to reel us back from the brink of destruction. We've seen the documentaries, we've read the reports, we've attended the protests and the teach-ins, and hopefully, we've all taken steps to abdicate our reliance on fossil capitalism. Sorry. And I know here you do, and there are people out there too, we do our work to alleviate all the other isms that cause suffering in the world. And I know, or I'm assume, but I'm pretty sure, that many of us are just frustrated that we all do all we can, but the greedy oligarchs don't change their ways, which in turn, though, I mean, it's problematic in and of itself, right? But it also then makes other people feel apathetic and say, I guess I shouldn't bother either, right? But I'm here to remind us that like one little pebble sends out all those ripples. So every time we're doing something, we're modeling another way of being, that another world is possible. So we have to stay our course. And the one root cause that we don't think enough about is this idea of dualism. And I think it's what makes all the other ones more powerful, right? It's kind of like the nutrients in the soil, right? If everything's separate, then it's okay if I jump on this train, or it's okay if I, believe in fossil capitalism, right? Because it has nothing to do with me. I'm separate from that. So 30 years ago, I lived in Seattle and taught at the American Indian Heritage School. I was an ecology and biology teacher. And at the tender age of about 23, I'm trying to remember how long ago that was, my entire worldview changed thanks to my Indigenous colleagues. They helped me take my scientific understandings of ecology and Earth systems and connect them to a larger and more grounded understanding of interconnectedness, right? Like I knew this stuff we did with kids, and I was connected because I was a spiritual person, but spending my days for 2+ years with folks who lived it just altered the course of my life. So that's where my last, I don't know how many years I've really dug into it. I've really explored and thought about all we can do with science, which is amazing things, and some of it's really outrageous, right? And we can even keep changing all the things, and we could have our cap and trade, and we could do the financial incentives, and we can all that. But really, 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 if we do not fundamentally change how we see ourselves and our relationship to all life, I don't think anything will get better. Now, those folks in Seattle, and they were from all over, so intertribal folks, they were the first folks who pointed out to me that we have forgotten who we are. So the past 3 or 4 years in this course I teach, Science, Spirituality, Peace, Education, and Climate Change, we have read Robin Wall Kimmerer's amazing book, Braiding Sweetgrass. Many of us read that or some version of it, right? It's like, right? And every year as my 20-somethings, read it, I can almost see them shift, right? Like I just see something change in them, right? But I know it's happening because a few years back I introduced a dialogue journal where after classes they have to write in a journal and then share it with me, and then we respond to each other, right? And they share like all this stuff of like, I never thought of it this way, right? And they're smart kids, right? And over the years though, I've gotten the same query from students, pre-Vassar too, like, wherever I've taught, and probably even in this room when we were on that block, right? The other space. And to tell you the truth, if I had $1 for every time one of my students or someone I had a conversation with asks, how do we make people care? I maybe could pay off my student loans. That's a big maybe, right? And so I think that that's a fundamental question that we're getting at, right? Many of us have this sense of care, right? I probably told this story before, but I was raised by these urbanites who took me camping at young ages, and we grew things in our little postage stamp backyard, and my grandparents grew things on the roof, right? They were Italians, they made wine, right? And other things, right? So I got some of it, but it wasn't until I really started falling in love with the things that were around me that I understood that deeper connection, right? But and that's one of the questions my students ask too, like how do we teach people to care about things that they're not connected to? And that almost feels like a circular question, right? Like a chicken or egg. What comes first? We have to care about it and then we love it, or do we have to love it before we care about it, right? So I like doing environmental ed because it introduces children into these things that maybe they're not comfortable with or don't know about, and then maybe they'll care. But ultimately, I've landed on the idea that whether we know it or not, or experience it every day, we're lucky where we live, but I used to teach in New York City. One tree around the building, right, does not a forest make, right? So how do we still teach, or how do we still understand what we're connected to? And so that's where I keep coming up with how do we not just remember, but remember ourselves as part of this interconnected web. How do we break that duality? It's not even break, right? Like breaking a duality would then be separate. It's like, can we take that duality, like take that Venn diagram and push it till it's one circle, right? That kind of idea. And so I'm firmly convinced, as many of you are as well, that it's indigenous ways of knowing and living, full stop. And these aren't past concepts, they are timeless concepts. They are ancient and they are recent. And these ideas guide numerous communities living right here in Ulster County. So we have teachers all around us. They are ways of living that define this spiritual shift that I am asking all of us to try. And the core values from this shift, especially that come out, it's really fun when, my students pull out the values from Robin Wall Kimmerer. I don't have to even give a lecture. They're just like bam, 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 right? They get it. Reciprocity, relationship, gratitude, the idea of limits and boundaries, wonder, awe, among others. So I'm going to share a few quotes from Robin Wall Kimmerer. She says, we need to find our way back to the world of living things where we can be drawn into their mystery and power. I'm just thinking of that carrot on the card. Most of us are just like, it's a carrot, right? We grow carrots, right? But it's a miracle. Have you all seen a carrot seed? They're ridiculously small, right? You're like, holy cow. And then that comes out of the ground, right? Or I forgot who I was talking to the other day said, I can't believe that this little seed is going to make a tomato plant and all these tomatoes. And then inside those tomatoes are all these seeds that are going to make a tomato plant and make all these tomatoes, right? It's miraculous, right? And it's the same thing of thinking if all these people lived in community like the seeds inside a tomato, and then we all went and planted our own seeds, that could be miraculous as well. So this is another one, she says, when we begin to see ourselves as part of the ecosystem, we step into a new way of living. And I think it's, right? That was why I didn't put humans in there, because we don't always see ourselves as part of the ecosystem. And when we're there, we're the top predator. But we have to see ourselves in that ecosystem in a completely different way. Not as extractors, but as co-members, right? And I had guests come to class and they reminded me of a practice I was taught these 30 some odd years ago when I was taught how to make dream catchers, right? And I had to go to willow trees to find. And my friends gave me a little sack of tobacco. And I would, go to the forests and things in Seattle and leave tobacco and thank the tree before I took anything from the tree. And my guests in class did the exact same thing with my students. We went to Vassar's tree-filled campus, and they all had to find a spot and make an offering of tobacco and then sit and pray or convene with whatever their choice was. That's kind of huge on a highly secular campus to invite young people into doing that practice. And I don't know if tobacco's good, but I think whatever you have, right, to make that offering, there's that reciprocity, right? And then her last quote, she says, nature is not a place to visit, it is home. And that's where I also have a hard time with the idea of nature, because we think of it so much as the thing over there, right? And for all the years I lived in New York City, there's 2 old-growth forests in New York City, right? Well, they're not old-growth, they're virgin, right? So one is in Inwood Hill Park and the other is in the Bronx, just by the Bronx Botanical Gardens, which is crazy to think that's in the Bronx of all the boroughs, right? Anyway, but everything else are these beautifully manicured planned parks, right? Is that nature, right? Is it a substitute? Is it good? Yeah, but the word doesn't seem right. Do you know what I'm saying? And up here, I just walk into my backyard, or many of us do. I keep thinking of the Sawkill Road, right? how many trees were there and things. And then even in Kingston, have y'all been to the YMCA Farm Project? That's amazing, Broadway. And then you walk behind it and they're growing the most amazing food there. So I don't even know if it's nature or it's just land or it's us in a different form. Maybe that's what I'm getting at. So simply, we have to see ourselves not as apart from, but as part of. And I would even argue that part of on the same plane, right? No hierarchy in there. Right? If we really want to understand what we do and why we do it, or maybe more importantly, what we don't do and why we're not willing to make change, because maybe it's a little inconvenient or uncomfortable, we have to rethink who we are fundamentally and how we fit in. And so I ask you, and hold on, I forgot my prompt. Those of you who've been to Green Faith events with me probably recognize this one. Protecting the planet is sacred, right? It is a sacred act because the planet is sacred, and so are we. So I ask you, what would it be like if we moved through the world seeing everyone and everything as divine or sacred, whichever word you're more comfortable with? What if all our decisions were guided by values of reciprocity and non-duality? What if we remembered that we are as sacred as every tree, every fruit, every honeybee, every fish, every one of us sitting here? Would that help us remember who we are?